is just one of the smartwatches on display at the Consumer Electronics Show this week. Ian Sherr joins us from San Francisco to walk us through one of the hottest categories at CES. Hi, Ian.
Hi, how are you doing?
Great. So what are some of these capabilities, we saw a little bit of it there, but that these smartwatches are offering?
Well, it's basically what Joanna explained in that segment. Most of them get messages on your wrist. You know, if you get a text message or an email or a tweet sent to your phone, it relays it to the watch on your wrist, and essentially removes the need for you to dig into your pocket and pull out your phone. Now you just kind of look up at your wrist, and that's part of the problem, actually, that a lot of these watches are trying to overcome, is that most of them do essentially the same thing. They do all of these notifications. Some of them have apps like the Pebble, but for the most part, they're all doing very similar things, and they're doing it in a very similar way. So it's really hard to stand out.
Right. I mean, what companies are getting in on this game, and are they doing anything to differentiate themselves from the competition?
Sure. So you've got a bunch of these. I mean, pretty much everyone you can think of is jumping in. You've got big ones like Samsung, who made the Galaxy Gear. It came out last year. That one's a little different because it has a color display and it has a camera built into the wrist strap, so you can actually take photos as you're walking around. And then you have small startups like there's one called PHTL, which makes called the Hot smartwatch. And it has all sorts of stuff on there. It has a touch screen so that you can draw an A and you get to the apps, or you push a button and you get even a flashlight. So they're all trying to stand out in little ways. But again, a part of the problem, and as a lot of venture capitalists, a lot of analysts have pointed out, they're all basically doing the same thing. And then on top of that, they're all still pretty bulky, which is why you may not have seen a lot of smartwatches on normal people yet. You know, these things are primarily still a little too thick. They rely a lot on plastics because it's expensive to make them. And so it's a kind of it's still a slow start to this whole thing.
And I think that if you're an early adopter of any kind of technology, you know there are going to be kinks, you know there's going to be bulkiness. Is that a reason to hold off on buying one of these things?
It depends on who you are. You know, I personally have been using a smartwatch since February. It's the first time I've worn one in a watch in general in over a decade. And you know, I'm benefiting from it partially because of the nature of being in the news business. But I can see that a lot of people who are around me wouldn't benefit from it. So it really depends on who you are and if you want to get in the ground floor. If you're one of those people who are buying Palm Pilots back, you know, over a decade ago, then maybe this is something that you're going to jump in on too. But it's all about, you know, when do people want to jump into these big technologies, and also whether or not it'll ever take off. It's possible that this will go nowhere, and that something like Google Glass or some other wearable technology will actually become the thing that really gets into the mainstream.
Now, these watches that we're talking about, they're not exactly cheap. The Samsung version you talked about goes for $299. The Pebble is $249. Yeah. So what's the benefit of these if you already have a smartphone, you know, like so many of us do now?
Right. So as I said before, the big thing that they're trying to do is basically eliminate the need for you to dig into your pocket and pull out your phone when you get a notification. I don't know about you, but you know, I carry my smartphone in my pocket all the time, and as I'm walking down the street, I'm used to the vibrations of it now, and so I don't notice when someone calls or someone sends a text message. So that vibration on my wrist does make a difference for me. But again, it's personal taste, and that's part of the thing about this, is that you know, most people's personal tastes have been going away from watches. A lot of my peers carry around their phones for time now. They don't use watches, and so this is battling up against a number of different trends. You know, not only do we have new technology, which is bulky, not that terribly efficient. Most of them have at max 7 days of battery life, which for a watch is pretty crazy if you think about it. And they're also going up against this trend that people are getting rid of their watches. So how do you fight against both of those? And that's why a lot of the VCs and the analysts out there are kind of handicapping this.
All right, it'll be interesting to see if it takes off. Ian, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.